So welcome everybody. My name is Jackie Petito and I use pronouns she, her. I am the Assistant Director of Portal, the Portrait Gallery Scholarly Center, who is hosting this program this evening. So those of you who have joined us before, you may be familiar with my colleague who usually hosts our programs, Kate Clark-LeMay. I'm filling in for her this evening and I'm super excited to have the opportunity to join you. So thanks for tuning in. This evening's conversation, A Closer Look, Photographs Conservation at the National Portrait Gallery, will be presented by my colleague, Christina Finlayson, who is our photographs conservator here at the National Portrait Gallery, and my colleague, Leslie Ureña, curator of photographs at the Portrait Gallery, will moderate the Q&A this evening. Before we begin, we'd like to give a land acknowledgement. Although we are tuning in today from different places, we gratefully acknowledge the Native peoples on whose ancestral homelands we gather, as well as the diverse and vibrant Native communities who make their homes in these places today. We also recognize the inherent flaws of portraiture. Since the nation's founding, who is represented and how one is represented reflects the country's flaws, as well as its strengths. The National Portrait Gallery strives to present a more complete narrative, one that acknowledges the history of slavery, racism, and inequality in the United States. We are so pleased to present this evening's program as a part of the Greenberg Steinhauser Forum in American Portraiture. We extend our gratitude to Susan Steinhauser and her late husband, Dan Greenberg, the sponsors for tonight's program, for their generosity, which makes this ongoing virtual conversation series possible. So we have, as you may know already, the chat function enabled for you tonight. So please go ahead, feel free to comment there and connect with one another. But if you have questions throughout the presentation, and we hope you do, please use the Q&A function, as we will not be monitoring the chat for questions. We'll only be looking at the Q&A, and we want to make sure we answer your questions. So now I'll introduce our guests. Christina Finlayson is our photographs conservator for the Smithsonian's National Portrait Gallery. She earned a Master's of the Arts and Certificate of Advanced Study in Art Conservation from SUNY Buffalo State College in 2010, where she specialized in works of art on paper and photographic materials. Prior to attending graduate school, she was a conservation technician and registrar for Paul Messier LLC, a private photographs conservation studio in Boston, Massachusetts. She has held additional internships and fellowships at the Smithsonian Freer-Sackler Gallery, Fine Arts Museums of San Francisco, Legion of Honor, San Francisco Museum of Modern Art, and the Museum of Fine Arts, Boston. We're also pleased that National Portrait Gallery Curator of Photographs, Leslie Ureña, will be moderating today's conversation. In 2018, Dr. Ureña co-curated with Dorothy Moss the presentation of Lee Mingwei's Sonic Blossom as a part of the Portrait Gallery's performance art series, Identify. Her past exhibitions include One Life Marian Anderson and In Mid-Sentence. Dr. Ureña's upcoming exhibitions include Block by Block, Naming Washington in 2021, and in 2022, she will be co-curating Kinship, part of our Portraiture Now series, and along with Dr. Taina Caragol, the 2022 Outwin Buchiever Portrait Competition. All right, so now we're going to turn to our lecture. So please welcome Christina Finlayson. We'll give Christina a moment to share her screen and turn her camera on.
Hi. So I'm going to open up my presentation saying that I figured I just did this. Okay.
And remember, please type your questions in the Q&A function so that we can get to those at the end.
I'm having a weird time with this. It keeps popping up with the meeting is being recorded as my screen.
You should be able to hit OK on that, but no worries, no rush, take your time.
Oh, okay, let me see. Sorry.
You are totally fine.
Okay. Can you see that?
Perfect.
Okay. So I guess I'll begin. As Jackie said, I'm the photographs conservator at the National Portrait Gallery, and I've been here for I started off as a contractor, and then I've been here as a full-time employee for about 5 years. So today I just thought I would share some of just kind of give a kind of an overview of the history of photography, but also share some of my favorite treatments that I've had allowed to work on while I've been here. So the first image I'm going to show is a daguerreotype, which is sort of the earliest successful photography process, which consists of image material on a copper plate with a thin layer of silver, so kind of like a mirror. This daguerreotype is also the earliest known photograph of a president so far. So this is the daguerreotype. We suspect that it's an original frame, which is very sort of very simple, and it had some condition issues like cracking, and surface scratches, and on the back there was all these labels and pressure sensitive materials. So since we don't have a frames conservator on staff, I took the daguerreotype out of the frame and carefully removed all the attachments using a combination of moisture and heat. And then the frame was sent to a local frames conservator in the area to actually carry out the frame treatment. So this is the daguerreotype out of its frame without its cover glass. And you can see that there is a black paper mat that was attached to the reverse of the plate with what looks to be blue painters, that blue painter's masking tape. From these micrographs, you can see that there's sort of filaments and there's dust on the surface of the daguerreotype. And then, and then around on the lower right image, you can see around the edges where corrosion products generally form on daguerreotypes, because daguerreotypes by their nature are very reactive with airborne pollutants. So that's why. So here's the daguerreotype with the mat removed, and then this is actually a daguerreotype of Martin Van Buren. But part of the treatment process for daguerreotype is ensuring that it's in an enclosed, like a sealed package. So with this, I'm using Filmoplast tape around the edges and on the very edge of the brass mat. And then on the reverse, on the reverse of the plate, there is a section of Mylar to just make this just like a micro environment to protect the daguerreotype. So this is a before treatment image and then the after treatment image. And I don't know if you can see, but like the cracks on the frame was cleaned and the cracks were filled. And then for the daguerreotype, I cleaned the surface glass in an ethanol bath and then allowed it to dry thoroughly before sealing all the components together. And then I cut a piece of black mat board to kind of recreate the original window mat that the piece came with. So this is the before treatment is on the left and the after treatment image is on the right. And then the frame, you can see the before treatment is on the left and the after treatment is on the right. And it's just, it's a lot tidier, and the back of the frame was built up to better safely hold the object. So now this next piece is John Frederick Kenzit, who is a painter who is in the second, in the Hudson River School. And he's also one of the founders of the Metropolitan Museum in New York. And this is an ambrotype, which is basically it's like an underexposed collodion negative on glass. And so this is a before treatment. Oh, and one of the things about, so this is the before treatment image, and you can see that it was kind of grimy, and the interior frame was broken at one edge, which you can see in this next picture. So one of the corners had failed. And then you can see, oops, sorry. This on the upper right is the amber type without a dark backing. So you can see that it looks like a negative, but once it's put on a dark backing like paper or fabric, it'll appear as a positive. So here's just an example of that. And this is, again, not Kenzit. This is some Frederick Westlander, but I just wanted to show how that looks with the negative positive aspects of the amber type. So, and you can see, so again, when this mouse is very reactive, I'm going to try just using the mouse pad. So yeah, so with this amber type, they were usually presented in cases, and same with the daguerreotypes. And a problem with that is that the joins, particularly this amber type, was too heavy to really be supported by this setup. And the covers were, separate from the object. So the treatment for this, the glass was cleaned, and the cover and the back of the frame were reattached with strips of Japanese paper that were inserted underneath the leather of the cover of the frame. And then the frame conservator for American Art, the American Art Museum, he helped me repair the join and the broken frame. So yeah, and that's one of the things about the Lunder Center, which is in the at the Portrait Gallery and American Art Museum. We share the space and we share the museum, but we actually, I think they're the only department that have staff, the shared staff in the one area. So anyway, so Martin, the frame conservator, helped me with this particular mend. So this is the piece after treatment with its covers reattached. And then just to show you what it looked like before treatment, this is the back of the object. But so this is an after treatment with the covers reattached, and similar to the daguerreotype, I used similar with the daguerreotype, I used Thermoplast tape over a section of Mylar to kind of seal the edges, and then because it was missing one side of its brass mat, I kind of tried to make it less distracting, and so I toned the Thermoplast tape with golden acrylic paints. All right, and this is, oh, and then I'm sorry, I should have said, like, the amber type was the sort of next step in photography. And then after the amber type came the tin type. And then there's another, but this is the following, the Albumin silver print in a carte de visite format, which were extremely popular in the later half of the 19th century. And this is Robert Smalls. And he wrote a dedication in the lower margin. And generally, when daguerreotypes are newly constructed, they tend to have a richer image tone. And so this is just an example of, something gets too much light exposure, it can lose image material, or the image material will fade. So with this this carte de visite, you can see that there is on the picture on the right-hand side is in raking light, which is when light comes from one direction. So it helps you display, it helps you see and visualize more of more of, say, any kind of distortions or damages. So you can see along the bottom edge that the mount has started to delaminate, and up at the upper left corner that the same problem is happening. It's starting, the cover paper is starting to curl. And there's definitely surface grime and some accretions, and then some discolored previous retouch. So I surface cleaned the photograph overall using both dry and aqueous methods. And then on the back of the mount, I'm sorry, for scale, like carte de visites are relatively small. So I would say like maybe like 3x5 or something, 3x5 inches. So in the back of this, there was these old, as you can see in the raking light image on the right-hand side, you can see these old accretions or residues from a previous housing situation. So this treatment, again, I surface cleaned it using dry and aqueous methods. And then I set down the areas of the lifting mount with wheat starch paste to kind of stabilize it. And then I removed the residues on the back with a combination of locally applied moisture and just by scraping the areas gently with a scalpel blade. And this did cause a little, as you can see in the image on the right-hand side, the raking light image, you can see that there was some damage to the paper underneath the attachment materials. So, so this is a before and after treatment. And I did some, you can see that, well, I guess, I don't know if you can see, but anyway, the areas of previous retouch were removed during the cleaning. And then I was able to better integrate the image area with a watercolor applied over a barrier layer, which is important in conservation because we want to make sure that we're not changing the objects. We're trying to make it more faithful to what the artist originally intended, but we're not trying to make it, completely make it new again. So we like to have our treatments being reversible as much as possible. Okay, so this is the reverse after treatment, before and after treatment. This next photograph is by Augusta Savage, who is an American sculptor active in the Harlem Renaissance. And the photograph is by Carl van Vechten, who is also did a lot of portraiture of the Harlem Renaissance artists. And this is a gelatin silver print. And these were, became sort of the dominant form of photography in the late 19th and 20th century. So this is a before treatment, and a problem that happens with gelatin silver prints, or not a problem, but what can happen is that the silver will migrate into the binder surface, causing kind of mottled bluish appearance, and it's called silver mirroring. And sometimes it's not, sometimes it's not too disfiguring, but in this case, it was really sort of obscuring the image. And there's also, you can see around the edges that there is some image and binder loss along the edges of the print. So sorry, I'm just gonna take a sip of water. So the decision in discussions with the curator was to try to reduce the appearance of this mirroring as possible. So this is the image in Reiki. Oh, this is, I messed up. Okay. So this is an image after treatment and before treatment. And what I did was first I went over, I used a dry method, which is consists of using a vinyl eraser, which will leave no residues behind. So carefully rubbing over the surface with a vinyl eraser. And then I follow that by applying a dilute solution with cotton swabs over the surface. And then because when you apply moisture to a photograph, they're very reactive to moisture. So the print, kind of developed a concave curl overall. So I humidified the photograph over water in a passive humidity chamber, which is basically a tray with a screen and then some water in the bottom. So it doesn't have any direct contact with the actual moisture, but the vapor causes the print to relax. So I humidified it, and then I dried it and pressed it in a warm dry mountain press to try to get it back into plane. And then I consolidated the edges of binder loss with a dilute gelatin solution, and then did some colored compensation along the edges with watercolor and colored pencils. So the before treatment is on the left, and the after treatment is on the right. And you can see that the mirroring is much diminished, and it's easier to read the image, the portrait. And then here's another gelatin silver print of Harry Warnicky and Robert Cranston. And Harry Warnicky was a photographer who worked for a New York paper, and he worked in the color Carbro print process, which I don't have an image of because I haven't treated any of them, but it's an early form of color photography, and was pretty popular in the 30s and I guess the 30s and 40s. And he photographed people like W.C. Fields and Orson Welles and Lucille Ball. And this is just a photograph of him and his associate Robert Cranston boarding a plane. And the issues with this were that there are these sort of like minor rust, like almost rust-like accretions up in this in the upper left quadrant. And then there was slight overall curl. And then the most major thing was, or the most major issue was that at one point someone had folded the photograph and caused this crack in the image and binder loss along the bottom, near the bottom edge of the photograph, which was pretty visually distracting. And also just the photograph was a little compromised by this structural damage. So this is the before treatment image. And with this, and this is it in raking light, so you can really see the distortions, like the folds at the upper left and right corners, and then the crimping along the bottom edge. And it's just a raking light image. And then this is the reverse, and you can really see how like the paper fibers have been disturbed along that fold and are kind of sticking out. So with this treatment, I surface cleaned, I dry cleaned on the back, and then surface cleaned the front first with a variety of solvents, ultimately finishing up with a dilute solution of ammonium hydroxide to get rid of the surface imperfection, or to get rid of the accretions and some of the surface grime, and then and then with the crack along the bottom edge, you see here, I consolidated it again with a dilute gelatin solution, and then in painted along the image loss using, again, watercolors and colored pencil. So you can see that it's much better. The crack is no longer quite so visually distracting. And there it is in raking light. And I was able to diminish the appearance of the distortion somewhat. And then this is the back. And to try to stabilize the crack and also, kind of get it to kind of pull it so cause some tension so it would lie more flat. I put down 2 strips of Japanese paper to add as this, to stabilize it, and also try to pull the photograph back into plane. So yeah, so here it is on the right is the before treatment, and then on the left is the after treatment image. And in raking light, the before and the after treatment image. Oh, so this is my last, time is it? This is my last object to show you. This went faster than I expected. So anyway, this sort of brings us around full circle. And it's when the museum reopened to the public after being closed for renovations. And it's by as you can see from the date, it's by a contemporary photographer who works in the daguerreotype process, which is, where we started with John Quincy Adams. So this is this is the image before treatment, and you can see that the glass kind of has a cloudy quality to it. And then on the back, the image was sealed together with a pressure sensitive adhesive, which I don't know the composition of. So the decision was, oh, and there's also like a black paper mat over the plate, which wasn't, we didn't know the materials of, so it was decided to kind of dismantle it and then rehouse it in more better known materials that are known for their stability. So that's the reverse, and you can kind of see the processing stains from the solvents used in the construction of a daguerreotype. And the photographer signed it, and then also etched his signature into the back of the plate. So we decided to replace the glass with a section of borosilicate glass, which is known to be very stable. It's what they make, current chemistry beakers and pipettes and stuff is generally made out of borosilicate glass because it's known to be very, it's non-reactive. So we replaced the color glass with the borosilicate, and then again, the package was resealed in a similar way as the John Quincy Adams, where a piece of mylar was put on the back, and then the glass is put on top of the plate, onto the glass plate, and then the edges are sealed with the thermoplast tape, and to kind of mimic how the photographer presented the daguerreotype was to again tone the thermoplast tape with a black golden acrylic paint to mimic his original presentation. And this is the back after treatment. So this is before treatment on the left, and then after treatment on the right. And you can see that it's a lot easier. The image is a lot easier to read now that the glass is clear. And we have a few of his, yes. And so I also treated, because we have a few images of the reopening. And then also we have daguerreotypes of President Bush's, I think, second inauguration, and then President Obama's inaugurations. So they're pretty fantastic objects. So yeah, and one of the, I don't think I mentioned this, but yeah, so the Lunder Lab is the Lunder Lab in the Reynolds Center is shared between the American Art Museum and the National Portrait Gallery. But it's also one of the first, I think it might be the first lab that is visible to the public. So the lab is all walled in by glass on one edge, so people can come and watch and observe the conservators at work. So once we reopen, and if you're in the area, please come visit the lab. So thank you. I think that's it.
Thank you so much, Christina. Hello, everyone. I'm Leslie Ureña. I'm curator of photographs here at the Portrait Gallery, and I have the pleasure of working with Christina, well, remotely in the last few months, but we work closely on making sure that the objects that you get to see on the wall are in tip-top shape. So we have a few questions that have come in on the chat, and I also have a few questions for you, Christina. So it'd be great to go through. I don't know if you wanted to share your last, there was another surprise example. I don't know if you wanted to share the extra example for if we go into into the Polaroid, your treatment of a Polaroid, or we can bring that up in terms of the question, the Q&A, maybe.
Sure, I can just, I can quickly show that. I can show this. Oh, darn it, this mouse, sorry.
All right, we have reactive mouses.
Everything is coming after me. So we'll go ahead just with like the alarm going off too. I was just like, everything is turning against me.
Yeah,
so
just have
this last piece,
this area.
This last example I was going to show, it's not something that I actually really treated, but I kind of did. I did after it was on view. But it's this self-portrait by Chuck Close, and it consists of 16 individual dye fusion transfer prints, or more popularly known as Polaroids. And there's 16 individual prints, and it's quite large. It's at least 10 feet high when it's all together. So they wanted to show it for in a self-portraiture show that was done a couple of years ago at the Portrait Gallery, and it hadn't been shown since 1989. So just trying to happily, our mount maker, our mat cutter has good institutional memory, so he remembered how they installed it the first time. And the former paper conservator for the Portrait Gallery did research and consulted with other institutions that have similar oversized, complicated works to deal with. So this first shot is just basically just the layout, trying to figure out, how big the backing board would have to be, what the orientation is, what condition the prints are in. So happily, I mean, there was some planar distortion that you can see here, and they're not completely flat, but that's just the nature of the beast, I guess. And I didn't, I did not want to treat it because I've never treated one. It would just be a massive undertaking. So we basically decided to follow the same installation protocol that they came up with before, which was basically mounting each individual print to a section of 2-ply mat board, and then constructing a mount for these prints that could be that the prints could be attached to without too much intervention. So they decided with the 2-ply mat board, and then they attached Velcro to the backing board, Velcro on the strips to the backing board in a kind of grid pattern. And then each print was it was mapped out onto the backing board, and then each print was laid out in kind of this mosaic tile format. But it was a very, very labor intensive installation process that involved the paper conservator, myself, our mat cutter, and then just the installation, because it couldn't be mounted in the lab because it's too big to get out the doors. So it had to be mounted in situ in the galleries. So I'll just show you some pictures from the process. Oh, damn it. Sorry, goodness. So this is just the initial layout. Stop. All right, this is not happening. Okay. And then in these images, you can see Ed Meyers, who's our mat cutter, and also mounts and a lot of our works have art on paper and photography. So here he's measuring out the hinges, and you can see it's a Japanese paper hinge. And then in the lower image, he's brushing out the adhesive. And because of the slick nature of Polaroid prints, we couldn't use our usual mounting techniques of like wheat starch paste and Japanese paper. We had to use a pressure sensitive adhesive. And then for the side that came into contact with the photograph, and then PVA was used to attach the other side of the hinge to the 2-ply mat board. And the pressure sensitive adhesive we used is not considered ideal for long-term storage. So that was kind of my treatment, was once the piece was deinstalled, I removed all the hinges hinging materials from the photograph. And so it went back to storage. Okay, so, oh my God, stop using the mouse. Okay. So here he is preparing the hinges, and then because it's a pressure sensitive adhesive, I would burnish the side with a pressure sensitive adhesive to the back of the photograph. And then this is the backing board with the strips, with the Velcro strips, and then those little blue tape marks are to help us align the photograph. So because it's Velcro, we didn't want to be putting the photographs on and off and trying to realign it, because that would just put undue stress on the Polaroids. So here is the installation view of the gallery and the initial attaching of the photographs. And then, as you can see, here's members of our registrar and design and production department. You can just see how large that plexiglass is in scale to my colleagues. And then there's the frame, which was also ginormous. And here Here they're moving the photograph to place it in the frame, and then attaching the backing board, or attaching the back of the frame and screwing it in. And yeah, and you can just see that, it took a bunch of people, and it's very heavy. And then this is it installed in the gallery. So that's it for me. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Christina. It's always fun to, I was privy to some of that process for this last one, but always great to talk to you and hear more about how you ensure that the works are safe, and that they are exhibitable and are safe, really. I mean, you do so much work related to that. So which is good. I'm glad you do that. So we have a few questions to chat, and I'll intersperse with some of my questions. I want to make sure that our guests who are joining from all over the place have a chance to speak with you through me. So I will go ahead and start reading the questions. And there's a question from Catherine Seekworth. I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name, but I understand that the protective glass on daguerreotypes often needs to be replaced because it degrades. Is this a common issue with amber types?
I have not seen it because it's a different, I think, because it's a different process entirely, and because particularly, I forgot to mention this, but I think his name was Ambrose Cutting, but he developed a method of putting two pieces of glass, like sandwiching two pieces of glass together, so that the collodion side is protected. And I haven't noticed the same amount of deterioration. The amber types in the portrait gallery are really nice. So, but yeah, I haven't noticed the same problem as daguerreotypes.
Thank you. And it was nice you were through your presentation, you were able to give us sort of a history of process as well as we were going along. And the Portrait Gallery's collection has a lot of different processes. Is there one with which you've worked the most? Is it gelatin silver? Is it something else in our collection that you may have treated the most? Do you have a sense of that in terms of your work so far?
I feel like I've done a lot of work on the daguerreotypes, just in terms of repairing cases, and the ones that aren't resealed or the ones that have been sealed previously, but whoever did the intervention attached pressure sensitive tape directly to the back of the plate, which isn't ideal. So just kind of fixing things, and yeah. But I feel like, well, I think because also maybe I just feel that way because the case objects are generally the closest to my heart. So.
And why is that?
Oh, I just love them. I mean, they're just particularly daguerreotypes. I just think they're magical, that kind of instant, and then the fact that they're unique. And then I like silver. So.
That's great. And they're actually bringing us back to the daguerreotype example that you showed, the John Quincy Adams. There was the daguerreotype. The question from Peter Mostardo was the John Quincy Adams daguerreotype cleared up its many accretions via dry or via an immersion? So
no. I just used on the John Quincy Adams. I never touched the surface of a daguerreotype. So the glass was cleaned in immersion, but like with the daguerreotype, I just used a little air, one of these little air blowers under the microscope, because I think all daguerreotypes are kind of terrifying, but this John Quincy Adams was just a whole nother level of fear.
And excitement too. We were very excited about it. Came into the collection.
It's a fantastic object, but just when first taking off that cover glass, it was like everybody out of the lab.
No one breathed. And Lorna Grenadier would like to know, how long does it take to make the restorations you've shown?
Oh, I'm sorry.
How long does it take to do the restorations? Or the conservation? I guess it depends on the.
Yeah. It ultimately, some are really fast, and then some are not really fast. Some things really fast, but some require more, take a longer time. And I didn't mention this, but also just for every treatment that we do photo documentation, extensive photo documentation, and we also write, reports on the initial condition and then our proposal, which we clear with the curator. So the whole process, the actual hands-on intervention may not be that long, but the whole process kind of is intense, or, you know, it does take a long time.
Right. So it's from the assessment when you receive the object and you review it. I mean, what part of the process involves when works come into the collection? Christina examines them and takes a look at them and proposes, you know, this may be a proposed treatment that we all discuss together and then take it from there. So, it depends on the object, and it is sometimes there's paperwork involved as well. So, and that was actually, a lot of people have that question. How long does it take to do these things? Of the ones that you showed today, for instance, like which one took the longest, do you think? Do you recall?
I think in some ways that John Quincy Adams, you know, because I don't think I mentioned that either. It's so funny, like after you do a presentation, you're like, I forgot that. But I like, you know, I looked at a lot under the microscope. And I think just because I was, I had trepidation about doing the treat, you know, the trepidation about it, that may have taken the longest. And then, and the Kenzit took a long time just because of reattaching the covers and, you know, this having to repair the frame, and then just that was kind of extensive because lifting leather is not that easy. So
when you're approaching, say, the John Quincy Adams or the Kenzit or any of these works, what is some of the advanced research that you do? I mean, it's not just about the materials and the science, but it's also about the artist that they're working with. Can you walk us a little bit about, for one of them, about the advanced research before you even approach any of these?
Well, because it's unfortunate, we don't have a material, like we don't have any analytic equipment in the lab, so I couldn't do any kind of like well, actually now with these treatments, we do have an X-ray fluorescence capability, but we didn't when I was doing these treatments. But generally that is something I like to do if I have the access to it, is get a better understanding of what the actual structure is. So
great. And one of our attendees who prefers to remain anonymous, it's surprising that the 2006 image needed restoration, or is it just accepted that images created using some of these methods are going to need it at some point, no matter the conditions that they're kept under?
Yeah, I just think because it is sort of unusual, but I just think you know, I mean, we're all kind of mystified by what caused this kind of clouding. So it would have been kind of interesting to do, you know, some analysis of, you know, but we just didn't have the capability. So yeah, it is sort of unusual, but, you know, I know because I was able to visit the photographer, and I know he's like a really conscientious, concerned person about the stability of, so yeah, but it is kind of unusual. And
then a big in line with that daguerreotype, in terms of the objects, the daguerreotypes created today, are they using the same materials? Are photographers using the same materials that they would have used in the 19th century? Is it the same process, more or less?
It's a similar, but they use different, like the chemicals aren't quite so toxic as they were in the 19th century. Like there's a safer, I don't know off the top of my head what has been switched out, but like one of my photo books, they say like, I won't even tell you how they did it because it's so bad for you. But so they have you know, it's still not the safest thing, but yeah, similar. It's a similar technique. Yeah. So just less damaging.
Just less damaging. That's good. I'm glad that there's been an improvement in that, and it's also less damaging for you as well as you're treating these objects and these works. And as for those of you who can see Christina's lab behind her, you can see the tubes and all the different things that are used. There we go. Thank you. Now we're getting a tour of the lab. So if you can't make it to Lunder, you're kind of making it to Lunder through this presentation today. And Monica Bravo has a question. I'm curious about differences between working as a conservator in private practice versus in an art museum. Can you speak to differences in goals and priorities, etc.?
I don't know, well, because I was pre-programmed when I was doing private practice. So it wasn't, you know, I was kind of sheltered from any real opinions about that. But I mean, it seems, you know, it's probably, I mean, the same code of ethics through our professional organization apply regardless of where you work. And I mean, in the private practice, I mean, they never turned anything away in general. I mean, it's like they worked on everything from, you know, 19th century baseball card, you know, photographs to contemporary, you know, digital work. So it's probably a different pace, but it's a similar attitude, I guess.
Right.
So,
and then here, you know, the pictures that you showed of, especially with the Chuck Close, and then also you spoke of the collaboration with Sam for the frame, or for one of the works, so collaborating with people at Lunder and all of the other colleagues that are engaged, is that something that was similar, I guess, in the private practice versus your work now?
well, I think I think just conservators just tend to be, you know, if I have a question, you know, I can
to share, ask questions.
Any number of people to, you know, and if I have a concern about, you know, or if I come across something that I've never encountered, there's just a whole group of people that you can reach out to, and people are generally really quite generous.
Yeah.
So
that's great. All the ones I've worked with have been lovely, so I'm very excited. I can attest to that. So there are some more technical questions that have come in. Veronica Diaz is saying, "Hi, Christina, thank you so much for your talk. It was so interesting. The question is regarding the vinyl eraser. When you used it, was it difficult to control in order to not create abrasion? And I think I missed this, but why did you apply a solvent after the eraser?"
Because well, it's the Stabler. It's Stabler vinyl erasers. And I was very, you know, very gentle, because I, again, didn't want to scratch, you know, cause any scratching. And then I followed it with a solvent because there's areas where the mirroring just did not react, you know, didn't reduce. And I wanted to try to give it a more overall even appearance. So I did have to use a little solvent. So.
And you can, I don't know if you want to go back to that treatment or turn off your PowerPoint so that we can, but either way, but there's a question about the Japanese paper, and several people have asked this question. So I'm going to go ahead and ask, what is Japanese paper and why is it used? And there are multiple people asking this question. What is Japanese paper?
Sorry, Japanese paper, it's made of kozo fiber, and it's a plant, and it creates these really long, flexible fibers. And it's also known to be, you know, and it doesn't have any additives, chemical additives, like our machine-made papers. And it's just, and machine-made paper too just tends to get, you know, gets embrittled over time, whereas Japanese paper tends to have a good longevity. So that's why we use it. And it's generally, it's seasoned works, you know, and works on paper, and you generally use it if you're mending a tear, just because it has good aging properties. So,
and that's a question that's come up in terms of the aging of works, and whether you've noticed, say, for the Chuck Close, whether there's been, have you been monitoring? This is from El Satis, whether you've been monitoring the color change on that. And then there's also a question about from Taina Caragol about your concerns for contemporary photographs as opposed to historic ones. And this is sort of tied also as well to how long do we exhibit works, and how tell us more about that.
Yeah, I'm my concerns with it, because I feel like, you know, with historical, like, or, you know, with sort of historical 19th century to historical, I mean, those things have been studied and analyzed. And with contemporary photography, I feel like my understanding of it is less than ideal. And then there's some digital prints that I find kind of terrifying, because again, they're changing ink sets, and, you know, it just papers, and it's just a whole a lot of variables that I don't quite know that much about yet. So I love them. I mean, some of them are so beautiful, but it's, and because they're, you know, the ones that are coming in are generally super pristine. So if anything goes wrong, you'll see it like that. Whereas, you know, with some historical prints, you can kind of fudge it a little bit. And so
work around like a little bit more.
yeah, and
So,
like it's sort of, it's expected that something's going to age, you know, whereas these perfect prints are just kind of, oh God.
so would you say then that there's a question about what are the most challenging types of photographs to treat? Would you then speak to the inkjet or another process perhaps that would be the most challenging?
Probably, yeah, like early inkjet prints, I think would be, you know, like the ones made in the early 90s, like the iris prints are just, you know, if, you know, walk past a sink with one, it's going to bleed, you know, pretty much. So they're those. And I mean, yeah, I think a color photography, I think I've only treated one color photograph since I've been at the portrait gallery. So I don't have a lot of experience, so I find them intimidating. So,
yeah. But it's also fun, I think, I hope.
yeah.
There's a question about the backs, from Stephen Roberts. Are all of the bits and pieces removed from photographs, especially the backs for framed pieces, safe for possible future reference, or are they tossed? And how detailed are your notes for each conserved piece?
I should have mentioned that any paper labels or, you know, attachments that are generally get put into a sealed Mylar enclosure and then given to the curatorial files for future reference, you know, unless it's like, yeah. So pretty much everything I take off the back.
And then you write extensive reports about what.
Yeah, we keep track of, you know, what materials are used and what the inscription says, and so.
And also the photographs you've been taking. I mean, as you presented today, these are some of the photos that are part of that monitor the treatment as you're going along. Which is really a helpful process. Let's see. How many years has it taken to gain your skills and knowledge? This is a question from Avatar 2D. So how long have you been studying this? How long have you been in the biz?
Well, I became aware of conservation when I was sorry, the security guard. He went, yeah, he's like,
at least the power is still going. The power is still on.
Yeah, he just wants me out of here by 7. So, so what was I saying? Oh, yeah. So I became interested in conservation when I was an undergrad, because I worked at I did my work study at the museum on my college campus. And then, you know, they had someone come in, a paper conservator come in and do a survey. And I was just kind of, you get to look at art all day long. What's your job? So I thought that was great. But then I got intimidated by the chemistry. So I kind of put it off for a couple of years and then just decided I would take the chemistry. And so basically, when I started pre-program, I did 3 years of pre-program before grad school, where I also took my chemistry courses and stuff. So I guess, well, 10 years kind of professionally, I guess, but then, yeah, 13 to 14 years all told.
So if anyone out there is looking into a career as conservator, Christina can give you some hints on where to go and where to study. There are some questions about like what to do with specific, you know, photographs that may have been affected by mold, how long works can be on view. Are there resources that those online right now can go to? Are there places, you know, are there Smithsonian resources that have more general information, or maybe the Library of Congress that might guide people who don't have access to you or other professional conservators?
The National Park Service they have good documents about caring for things and what to do in certain situations. And then there's the AIC, the American Institute for the Conservation of Historic and Artistic Works. That site has links and can give you guidance as to if you need to have a conservator, and we'll have conservators in your area that you can reach out to. And then there's regional centers like the Center for Historic Artifacts in Philadelphia. And then there's the Northeast Document Conservation Center that also has literature on their site. So.
And then in terms of, and all of these sites and others also kind of guide people towards, how long things can be on view and how they should be conserved. So what are the main culprits for photographs, I guess, is the question, like what is the enemy of the photograph in terms of conservation in your book?
Light damage is an issue of it, like fading, and gelatin silver prints are definitely less light sensitive than say, an albumin print. But and then of course, mold isn't it? So if climate control is very important in terms of keeping fluctuating humidity and temperature. Keeping the temperature and the humidity stable is really important for photographic care. And then the less light, the better, honestly. I mean, I wouldn't, if you leave something up for years on end, it's not going to survive well. And maybe don't have it in direct sunlight, when you do display it, just.
So light, moisture, light, moisture, water, all of these things prove problematic indeed. But thank you so much, Christina, for speaking with us today. Sorry, my flunky's been telling us it's time to wrap up. Thank you so much, and for sharing your knowledge with us. I know there are more questions in the Q&A, and we are happy if you drop your email somewhere, we're happy to get back to you. But thank you so much to everyone for joining us, and I'll turn it over to Jackie now. Thank you.
That was amazing. Thank you both so much. Thank you, Leslie and Christina. Great news. The Portrait Gallery is opening to the public. So check out our website, mpg.si.edu for timed entry passes, and we'll open Friday, May 14th. I also hope that you can join us again next Tuesday, May 11th at 5 p.m. for another Greenberg Steinhauser Forum in American Portraiture titled Enduring Images, Enslaved People and Photography in the Antebellum South. This will be presented by Dr. Matthew Fox Amato and Dr. Rhea Combs, who is our incoming Director of Curatorial Affairs of the Portrait Gallery. So we are super excited to welcome you back next week, and we thank you for joining us this evening. Have a nice night.